Hello, everyone. I'm Sam Eckmann of Gold Derby, and I am so excited to be joined by an incredible group of creatives behind the Wheel of Time. Joining me today is Rafe Judkins, executive producer and showrunner, Sharon Gilham, costume designer, Davina Lamont, makeup and hair designer, Ondrej Nekvasil, production designer, and Andy Scrase, visual effects supervisor. This show, one of the most exciting, or perhaps daunting, depending on how you look at it, challenges for a fantasy adaptation like this is that legions of fans are going to come to the table with their idea of how this, world looks and feels. So, as you're all world builders, I'm curious what aspects of those original, Robert Jordan books continually give you the most inspiration. Rafe, is there a place or an element of the books that you continually go back to?
I mean, I think one of the aspects of the books that's incredible for all of us is just how unbelievably detail oriented they are. I think anyone who has read The Wheel of Time would tell you that he is not afraid to dive into extensive detail on the sets, on the costumes, on what people are wearing and what the place looks like. You know, the building of cultures in those books is so important to why people love them and why they have been such an ongoing hit for such a long time in the book world. And so I think for all of us, that's a really rich resource to draw from. And usually the starting point we all have is like, okay, let's gather up everything in the books about this character, about this culture, about this building, about this place, and then also give these incredible HODs their creative freedom to take that and build from there.
Yeah, I agree. The books are the starting point, obviously for we have the script, but the books then we go to any references from the books from Sarah Nakamura, who's like our resident guru on the Wheel of Time books. And she gives me all the costume related information. And then, we take that, we use all of that information, as Rafe said, and then play with it and expand it. And then I come in with my own references for different cultures and add to it. So it's not sort of instead of, it's as well as, and very inclusive, because I think we're all very aware of how passionate people are about the books and want to respect that, really.
And I think also Sarah Nakamura, she's a huge fan of the book. So when we do divert to her for some information, she kind of gives us a little bit more on what the fans want to see, which I think is really important. And that's exactly like Sharon said, that's exactly what we all want to try and do is their vision and our vision together, and hopefully we pull it off.
Yeah, so we were trying to get like at the general atmosphere from the books because we are not able to really create the world as per the books, and we had to follow the scripts. For us was much more important, but the general information and general feeling about the nations and the places and the towns and the landscapes really came from the books. So that's like for me that was more like the books gave us the vibe, and the script gave us the more like layouts of the spaces which we needed for the show.
I think for us in visual effects, one of our main challenges beyond the shows is channeling. So the books especially are a really good starting point. Though I found that the channeling is described, but it isn't. So there was a lot of sort of creative leeway in that as well. And I kind of extended that from not just the books, but I was really interested for the channeling about, we have our cast involved. I spoke to the cast members who could channel about how they felt when they're channeling and what sort of part of the body they felt they were channeling from. So there's a kind of, a knock-on effect from the books themselves and how channeling and the characters had developed into our show, and how I could also take what our cast are doing in the show as well as the books and combine that with our channeling we were creating in season 2.
Mm. Well, when I was thinking of the books watching this show, one of the really fascinating developments is that it follows Moiraine, cut off from the One Power this season for a long period of time. Rafe, that's a deviation. What does that offer you? What does that unlock for you when you decide to take this turn?
I think it was one of, we have a few core deviations we tried to make at the very beginning of the series. One was to do it as an ensemble show right from the start, instead of just starting in Rand's POV. The books start just with Rand, but become ensemble books the whole way through. So we started as an ensemble, and we put the focus on Moraine. We have Rosamund Pike playing this character, so it's not a character you can leave on the bench. For instance, in book 2, she has one chapter that she features in, and so what we really tried to do was look at that chapter. It's very much about the conflict she's having with her warder, Lan, and wanting to pull away from him, worrying that her quest shouldn't be his quest, that she's going to get him killed as she's getting everyone else killed, and kind of stripping her down to who she really is at the core. And that's what we wanted to do this season with the characters, to see the woman who exists there as opposed to just this sorceress. And how do you, sort of put a character in a position where you see the core of who they really are, is you strip away their crutches, you strip away their sources of power. And by taking the one power away from Moraine, I think across the course of the season, you actually get to know her much more as a woman and a human being, and it allows Rosamund to have opportunities to bring her humanity to the surface, so that at the end of the season, when she's back to being, the badass sorceress that we all love, you know so much more about her when you get there.
Yeah. Well, speaking of sorceresses, this season we get a lot of time and a lot of looks inside the White Tower. And I loved getting, the details on the costumes in those areas. Sophia Okonedo has amazing gowns as the Amyrlin seat. Sharon, what was it like having to do that level of detail on so many women's outfits?
Oh, it's fantastic. I mean, the Wheel of Time is such an amazing gift to a costume designer. There's so much material, and there's so much to investigate and create. But I think you've got the big cultures like the Seanchan and so on. But I think doing the revisiting or looking again at the White Tower and going deeper in was another big part of the Wheel of Time for me, because in season 1 we saw sort of some of it, but we didn't really see the periphery so much. We didn't see the novices so much and the accepted. And I loved creating those costumes and making something that felt real as well as very elegant. And then also for the actual Aes Sedai, there's 7 Aes Sedai, 7 are there? 7. I always, whenever I say that, I panic in case I haven't actually said
Seven
that.
Ajas.
7 Ajas.
So they all have a color, obviously, as you know, and they all have a function in the White Tower. And I then wanted to create like a kind of costume fabric set of information about each color, so that they could so that they would be first of all, they'd be clearly differentiated from each other, but also so that there was a structure within the design for each color, so that it also made it more interesting for me, and also to give it a sort of framework. So the blues, for example, my references were all about movement and flowing fabrics, because they're spies and they move around. So it was sort of, the idea was a practical, physical one, but then it was also had a sort of psychological idea. And the reds are the police, or the kind of the ones in charge of the sort of not the soldiers, like the police. And so they're more uniform-like and sort of pulled in, kind of corseted in. And the greys are the negotiators. So they were sort of like woven fabrics. So I was just using the ideas of the colors and the ideas of who they are, and then sort of making it into a sort of metaphor for each one.
Davina, how did you work with those?
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, I think what Sharon and Ondrej have done too in the White Tower is really spectacular, because everything about it is very hard for film. Like, to have a space that is entirely white is really hard to build and to capture on camera and to make it feel like it's 3,000 years old. And then Sharon is handed what I call the ugliest rainbow of seven colors that really do not go well together. And she and Ondrej both work to make those two very difficult challenges look not only seamless on TV, but beautiful, actually. And you feel like you want to be a part of that world and lean into it. And those are the kind of challenges that like they so effortlessly overcome. And you get to just enjoy this world for its beauty instead of being stuck on, oh, why are these women all in primary colors? Why is this space all white? It could be very difficult for the viewer, and they've done an incredible job of making that feel seamless.
Yes, it could look sort of, color blocky if there wasn't enough thought put behind it, certainly. Davina, how do you work with those colors to incorporate those in the Aja's makeup?
Oh, look, it's a gift, really, what they have given me, what Sharon has given me, because I get to play with like balance, I guess, with hairstyles and certain looks. So I go towards, when I'm in the White Tower, everyone's more of an avant-garde towards a high fashion look for most of the characters. And I try and pull also some strengths. So when we are dealing with the reds or the warriors of the greens, I try and also combine a bit of strength into the hair, because it kind of balances out, their job, as well as, the healers, which are the yellows. So they're a little bit more soft and the hair is up. So I try and give a good detail of different hairdos. And also I'm working with a lot of different ethnics in my world. So I try and pull also from where not only the character, but also, who Rafe has chosen to kind of be either in the background or cast members. So I also try and pull from where they have also come from, and try and add a little bit of their culture into their hairstyle. And makeup for me for the White Tower is soft and natural. So it's pretty simple, and we just kind of give it some flair with the hairstyles and balance it out with with Sharon's amazing costumes.
Well, Ondrej, I think we touched a little bit on your tasks with the White Tower, and I was going to say in my mind that this might be one of your biggest builds on these sets, but I think everything this season seems like it was probably a big build for you. What is the challenge of working on that kind of scale?
No, just like I said, that is that about that scale and the fact that you want to see another city, another town, and you would like to have like a full scale of that town. You don't want to be like really tight in like a one building or anything like that. So for me, that was like really the challenge that we simultaneously that we work in different places, and actually on the second season in different countries and different continents, I should say. And we had to prep the sets for the for example, for the farm. In the time when we were shooting the Caribbean, in the same time we were already like building the farm city. So there was like the fact that I had a team of very good art directors, and each one was like dedicated to one set, and that we built like a separate teams, and each team was like a really focused on the specific set. So that was the way how we were able to work with that we actually simultaneously work with the different teams on the different tasks, because there was a lot. There was not only White Tower and Tarvalon, but also Carhian and the Forgate, and also the farm and all the palaces in farm in the same way. And as you know, like all these things are coming all together, and the shooting schedule is quite fast, so we don't have a time to stop. So we have to work quite fast to make it work. So yeah, that was the most important part for us. Yeah.
Andy, I think you mentioned channeling before, and since we're on the Aes Sedai homeworld, that was sort of a visual identity that was established in season one, but in this season, there's a lot more complicated, in-depth weaves, I think we see in this season. How did you kind of take that pre-existing visual identity of these spells and deepen it and expand it?
I think it was a sort of a main aim for me when I joined the show that channeling was something I personally wanted to focus on to see how we could improve. And after discussions initially had with Rafe, there's also an area I think he wanted me to look at too. So as we said at the start, always looking at the books as your source material and go from there. And there's a lot of very sort of textile-based language used to describe channeling, so I lent heavily into that. I thought it'd be a mistake not to, and also I thought I'd be making a mistake avoiding the description of colors being used as channeling. I thought that was a really kind of important aspect for the channeling, especially where you're having channeling happening in quick moments like battles. You're kind of interested to know what goes into making a weave, and the quickest way of doing that is showing it through color. And so we've been very true to the books and the colors that the blue represents water, for example, green and earth, and yellow with air, orange for fire, and then white for spirit. So I really wanted to stick to that, especially since I know the fan base are very devoted to the books. Sometimes I feel a real responsibility to stay true to the books in that regard. And then from there, for channeling, for me, it felt like an energy source. And I did I'd say about a week of research just before I joined the show, thinking about what it could be. And that's where I came across the photographic technique of light painting, which had a very thready-like structure to it, and certain approaches to it. And so when I saw that, and kind of, I wouldn't say a light bulb moment, but it was just that's channeling. That's it, because it felt beautiful, it felt powerful, it felt elegant, and it felt very striking as well. So that was our kind of our big influence for it. And then from there, it's about movement and, kind of getting it to react differently to different people. There's a much more of an organic feel to the Aes Sedai when they channel. For the Damane, almost like a cage around the arms to reflect the fact that they themselves are imprisoned. And then for Forsaken, again, these guys are kind of masters of channeling. So I wanted something that felt sleek. So, a lot more kind of straighter lines and geometric shapes happening to give it a kind of futuristic look, harking back to the Age of Legends that exists in the Wheel of Time. So, yeah, look, I think just call it a magic system does it an injustice. It's kind of a combination of magic and science. And so I think when I joined the show with my visual effects producer, Brian Shows, we wanted channeling to become almost like a character in itself. So we wanted to give it as many kind of layers and details as we could. And, there's several different elements we added, like as well as particles emitting from different types of channeling. So the earth channeling, we've got dust coming off of it, fire channeling, fiery embers. We've got some air distortion going around the air channeling, and then we've got water droplets that come off the water channeling. So yeah, as I said, there's lots of subtle layers that exist within channeling. But for me, season 2, that's just a start, and we will push it even more in season 3.
Oh, can't wait. I think one word that has been said by a lot of you is culture. That keeps coming up, which is important because I think this season really expands the world of the story considerably. And when you introduce new figures in a fantasy world like this, you're not just designing characters, you really are creating a whole new culture. The Seanchan really are the ones who jump to mind as such a huge force, a new force in this season. And I would love to know where you drew on to create their identity and build that culture.
I'll go first,
Sure.
if that's okay. Yeah, again, the books are the starting point. All the information, there is a lot of information about the Seanchan and the hierarchy of the Seanchan in the books. So that's already like very useful information. There's sort of referring to them as insect-like and terrifying and beautiful, etc. So that was really great to have that much information already. And then they're a mix of Mesoamerican and Imperial Chinese, their culture. So you've got, from a costume point of view, you've got so much information from those two enormous cultures in our world that you can sort of choose from and pick from. I think in a way it's quite kind of, when you start, it's quite daunting because you have so much information, and it's where do you start, and how do you narrow it down and start to make it into a kind of visual language. And then, and then I come in with my added on ideas, and the insect thing was something that we kind of leaned into quite heavily with Suroth and Turak, because they have this, Suroth's headpiece when she arrives is like a kind of compound eye of a fly with these sort of mandibles and things. And so I think, I mean, it was just really exciting to create something like that that we hadn't seen before in season 1. And Rafe's brief was helpfully something you've never seen before, something incredible that you've never seen before, or something like that.
Well, they
No
were
pressure.
especially difficult because they're, the Seanchan have to feel like they're part of the Wheel of Time world, that it feels like our show, but then they also have to feel like they've been separated from all the other cultures for 1,000 years. And so, it had to be different and alien feeling to our people, but also for someone just watching the Wheel of Time, it would feel like it fits inside the world of the show. So I think, we had a big challenge for everyone right up front with the Seanchan. And I think a lot of the way it works is this team that's on, you can see their faces now, like working together, of Andy coming up with an idea for how the channeling will feel different. Sharon has, this incredible color palette and costumes that then goes to Ondrej, that he bleeds into their system. And he's got, the structures in Morocco that he's going to be building off of. So we're finding ways to build pieces of that will look good everywhere. So it's all of us checking in with each other constantly and building something holistically. And you don't see that, or I haven't seen that as much on other shows I've worked on, of people really working in concert together to try to build these cultures. And for us, that's a huge piece of how it works, is everyone kind of working to one vision and one goal, and then putting their own piece into it.
And just in my world, like the Seanchan, when I first started on season 2, was one of the biggest things that I had to challenge. I had the challenge of, and for me, it was I wanted to add some scarification that looked like it belonged there, and that was part of their world, and that was for, the Soldam. And then from there, each and every character kind of developed from there. So when it came to the hairstyles, I knew that Sharon had, this fabulous costume for all of the different part of the Seanchan. And so I needed to keep it, mean and menacing in a way, as well as contained. So that it didn't really fight with the costume and the environment or anything else that was coming in. So we went obviously with the Soldam, we went with the braided hair and the long braided hair that kind of came down to their, some to their knees. And it was also finding the right color for the Soldam when they went to battle. It was different. We wanted to show a battle look for each of them, as well as, peering it back so that when they're in their, their own environment, that they would peel back and you can actually see the scarification. And then when it came to, Lady Sauroth, I had 2 parts, that I had to hit, which was the long 12-inch nails, as well as the shaving on both sides of the head. So each of the Seanchan had kind of different looks when it came to their hair and different shaving. And so that's all that I had to kind of draw on, and from there, the Seanchan just keep developing, and I wanted to make Sauroth, kind of scary, but also someone that, maybe you could approach, or, so we just decided to kind of, take off her eyebrows, and she had a full prosthetic headpiece on, and let her play. And it was really cool having her in the chair where we could, she didn't want to have her eyebrows. She wanted to have her eyebrows as a character. And I was so sure that it was going to work if I took them off. And so, together, once we started to, apply the prosthetics and put that on, she was like, yeah, this is it. We said it. So
Davina's always trying to snatch someone's eyebrows, and she finally got them with Sarah.
Every job I try and take a pair of eyebrows, and she wouldn't let me shave them for real. But yeah, every job I try and take a pair. So it's working so far.
Now, if I may, for us was difficult that actually that we were not able to show any Seanchan like a city or culture, so we had to show it in the details, like a lady Surat Palanki. It was like something completely different, which came to the village, and it was like a really like an alien ship, like placing in that little village of the Atwan's mill. And the same thing like at the real ships, when we did like that, we worked quite closely with Andy and his teams on the designs of these ships, because there was like something that we can show a little bit of the Seanchan culture. But they came and they occupied farms, so we had to deal like that. We had a culture of city of farm, but also we had like these elements which Seanchan came with, and they place it there. So not only like the banners and flags and tents, but also some furniture and some details. So for us, we had to kind of create that culture in the details of the as I said, like a crest and places when we can see a little bit of the gathering of the Seanchans. That we say, okay, they brought their own furniture into that details, but they are still using the palace which was there. They didn't build the palace. So that was kind of tricky for us, that we couldn't like I say, okay, they came and they built the whole palace for them, so we can show their culture more. No, they came and they occupied the city of farm, so we have to use the architecture of the farm and create that look, like it looks like that somebody take over and trying to import their culture into it.
Andy, when you're looking at that stuff, how do you decide what needs to be digitally done versus a physical build?
It's usually a kind of a decision that's made quite early on, when Ondrej disappointingly tells me he can't build a whole city, and then we just have to come in and help him. So kind of from a cultural aspect, we tend to, as a department, riff off of other departments, especially with art departments specifically. And that's part of the fun, I think, for me in the filmmaking process, especially in visual effects. Visual effects is not just a post-production process. It's very much involved straight from the start. And an aspect I enjoy a lot is working with other departments and the other heads of department. And as I say, Ondrej's probably one of the main ones we work with. And it's a case of, he tells us, he's designing, say, they look for a specific city, with farm, with Kyrene. And then, there's a kind of agreement of what we need to build off of the top of that. And it's kind of just extenuating his designs and complementing them, and it's a really fun process when you do that, because whilst we're doing the magic effect in the form of channeling in the show, when we come into environments, for me, that's what I consider more the seamless work, where hopefully people don't know it's real, don't realize it's digital, and they kind of just believe that it was photographed in camera, So it's a slightly different challenge, and I think that visual effects is most successful when you're building on things that are shot in camera. So with Farm, we always had the courtyard existed as a set that we shot on in Morocco, and from that we digitally built the palace. So every time you see the palace from the exterior, that's a CG build. Same with the watchtower in Farm as well. We built the top of that set practically, and then everything else you see behind it with the ocean, and when you see it full length, that's all a CG build as well. So I think, as I say, working those other departments when we get involved culturally is like one of my favorite aspects of filmmaking.
And we try to put as much practical on camera as we can on this show. We're very rarely, the actors are almost never on a green screen talking to a green stick. It just doesn't happen. Like, Ondrej creates so much of the world. Most of the sets are 360, and so you can look anywhere and the actors feel like they just really live in the set, and the director can shoot where they want, except Andy's in the background and it's going, don't shoot there. Don't shoot there. I have to add $500,000 if you shoot there, so not there. But it's a way that we can all work together to create so much in camera that the actors are able to use and the directors are able to use to do everything, so that hopefully when the VFX go in and post, and I think Andy and his team did a beautiful job with that this season, of you don't notice a lot of the incredible VFX in the show, because you kind of go, is that a city that they found in Morocco that we've just got like a dragon added to or channeling added to? But they've actually created most of that city, and so it's really incredible work.
I think what I really love about this season as we talk about these very big moments is that a lot of this work that contributes towards something epic seeming really allows the smaller intimate moments to resonate quite loudly. Like going down this track of the Seanchan, the torturing of Egwene and her capture is so heartbreaking and brutal to watch. Rafe, I'd love to just if you could talk about like charting that kind of character arc for her and pushing that character to that place.
A lot of times when we're in the writer's room at the beginning of the season, the first days are everyone comes in just with the things that they loved from that book that we're adapting or those two books that we're adapting that season. And so the first couple days are just all the things that we truly love on the board. And I think one of the things that for all of us was really impactful was, yes, the Seanchan are terrifying and a really interesting visual and a great storytelling technique, and that you don't see them coming and they just sort of take book 2 and season 2 and sideswipe what your expectations are. But the story that told us what it means was Egwene's. And so one thing we always have to do on the show in the writing is we have to carve out space for some of those stories because there's so much going on with so many characters across so many storylines in so many places that to get a whole episode that you can really just focus on one girl in a cell it takes a lot of work actually to carve out around that. And the other writers did a fabulous job of pushing things and moving things so that felt natural within the season, and that you could really just take that time and sit there with her, and we could take that shooting time and sit there with her. And even with all the grand, huge things that are happening in the world, like, that's one of the most memorable things of the season 2 is Maddie's performance in that episode. And we had to, production plays a lot in that too. Ondrej built soft floors that she could use. Davina was in with a makeup chart that had 50 different pieces for it, for how she's going to do it. Sharon was right there with Maddie. What feels comfortable and uncomfortable with this collar? What can I build for you? How can I help your performance? And Andy, building the VFX that helps support it. So even in a scene like that feels so intimate, actually, all of our HRDs are so in it with the actors and really helping them and trying to provide them with all the tools that they can do their work as seamlessly and possible as seamlessly as possible in this world.
Clearly, it requires everyone here to pull off something so epic. And before we have to wrap up, I would love to hear, because it's such a collaboration and things are only going to get bigger from here, I am sure. What is kind of the biggest lesson that you've each learned from this season 2 that you're going to carry forward with the rest of your work? Sharon, let's hear from you.
Everyone else, but in the writing perspective, I think one thing that we felt really good about was just sticking to our guns with the time we needed to take to tell some of the stories. Like, it's not what's desired in TV right now. Everyone's like, someone's going to turn off the show if you don't have something crazy happening every 30 seconds, like their phone's calling and YouTube's calling and, social media is calling. And I think we just stuck to our guns, and the network really supported us of having longer episodes, taking longer time with our stories. And for us, we felt like that really paid off, and that people actually did. Even though the episodes were longer, they were less likely to turn them off because they were more invested in the characters and what's going on with them. So from my perspective, that's something that I found to be a really good lesson of season 2 is just trust these characters, trust the story, and let it, take the time it needs to be told.
I think for me, I don't know if it's a lesson as such, but I think I would say that I just feel very proud of what we achieved, and I'm very proud of how much we achieved, how many different cultures and storylines we were working with, and also how we collaborated. Like, I think that it is the thing that we keep talking about, but it's so true. And I think that if I hadn't had Davina as a hair and makeup designer, it would not have been as straightforward and as easy and as exciting. And also, Rafe has encouraged us all the time to push the boundaries, to try new things, to, you know, not sort of fall back into the tropes and the familiarity of certain fantasy shows that have a particular look to them. And I think all of these things are just like, I feel very proud. I feel like we've really done something original and interesting and beautiful and exciting, and the stories are really good. So it's not like you're just focusing on the visuals. The whole thing feels very, very kind of organic and complete.
Yeah, and I think, you know, just going off with Rafe and what Sharon said, time is something that we really get in the film industry, and we got the, you know, especially when it came to the Seanchan, we got literally, I felt like I had, you know, the full moment was at the very end of the season when we went to Morocco. So I felt like I had enough time to R&D a lot of the different looks that we're going to put together, and to build those looks, but build those looks as well as building all the other looks that we had coming forward and throughout the series. And so, you know, for me, it was time. For me, it was building a team that could across the board do everything. So I was lucky in that regard that, you know, I had something like 22 people on my team that I knew at any stage of whatever Rafe, you know, was putting together in his fabulous scripts, that I could, you know, draw off that and be able to, you know, keep moving forward. So you know, I'm incredibly proud of what we've done, and you know, working with these, you know, great HODs, and also just, you know, Rafe allows us to play. And I keep saying this, you know, on all of, you know, my interviews, is that I'm like a kid in a candy store. I get to, you know, I get to bring actors in and play, and it's so incredibly generous and just, you know, creatively inspiring. So I love the series. I think it's an amazing job.
You know, the thing which we tried to do in the first season, and I think that we improve it a lot in the second season, is that, and that's something which we really, you know, when we had like about our very first discussion with Rafe, really at the beginning of the prep of the first season, was that idea that actually this show is grounded, and actually, and that's what Rafe mentioned today, that actually that we can see like the personal characteristic of like each person. We see that they are alive and they are real, like a people, and that's was what happened to Maureen, that we saw her like a house, and we saw her place where she grew up, and also, for example, what happened to Egwene, that we actually saw her, you know, details, and we saw her like really like in pain. And that was something that I think was very important for me, that we realized that the fact that every character and every location, every space and everything what we are doing is actually grounded, and kind of we can believe in it. We can believe that somebody living in that space, that somebody is actually going through that process, and we can really understand that pain, and that situation was very important. And from the visual point of view, that's something which we improve on the second season, and I hope that we are improving that on the third season. That actually that we work with a lot of aging, a lot of patina on the sets, and we kind of gave a little bit more life and a little bit more used on each set, and I think that was really like visible. And the same thing as Davina mentioned, like that because we need that we need these strong teams, that we really need like a very good collaborator. So the fact that we are building the team who is working on it, and that team is strong, that was very important for me. And that was like a really key lesson from the second season, that the team which we need has to be very strong to be able to continue working on this show.
I think there's two things I take away from the season, and one kind of leads into the other. That first being the fan base, and the kind of passion and commitment that's from the fan base. I think, you know, it's kind of dropped in the deep end of the show, and you soon realize how, you know, the kind of the force of the fan base of the books, and hopefully of the show as well. So there's a certain amount of pressure there to, you know, hopefully do justice for them and kind of not let them down. But leading on to that was how the visual effects we added to the show. I felt, you know, what an emotional part they could play in it, whether that be with channeling, for example, and just seeing the audience and fan reaction to that, with especially like Moraine channeling on the beach at the end, the Heroes of the Horn reveal moment with Matt on the high seawall, you know, definitely got an emotional response. But the one that definitely sticks out to me quite cruelly is the death of Hopper, where we had a great on-screen performance. And then, you know, digitally, we added the pool of blood coming from Hopper's head, which, you know, got a very kind of shocked, upset response. And it was actually during a cast and crew screening we had in Prague of the last episode where that came up on the screen, and there was a lot of sort of gasps and cries from the audience watching. And the cool aspect comes the fact that I high-fived my visual effects production supervisor, because we knew we'd achieved what we wanted by getting that kind of emotional response. You know, we've added that blood coming from Hoppers. So yeah, seeing how visual effects can emotionally contribute to a project, I think was a big takeaway for me on season 2.
Yeah, and I think just overall for the show, it's like we see so much in the industry right now, this moment of trying to pull back on artistry and trying to pull back on, you know, having people make shows like this and shows that are big. And I think these 4 people are artists, like they're putting their art up on screen, and that's something really incredible to watch. That's why we do what we do. That's why we make film. That's why we make television, is to put art up there. And so I think, you know, that's the thing that I learned more than anything from season 2, is that, like, if you give great artists a canvas to sort of express themselves on, you'll see beautiful stuff on screen and people will react to it. They feel the artistry there. And so I think that's a really important thing for all of us right now in our industry, and to always keep pushing on that.
Yeah, I agree. I think that thing about just more giving every single person on camera something really interesting to look at makes it feel grounded, as Ondrej said. It makes it interesting, and it just adds detail. I never, any character that I designed, I didn't give them more value or less value than the principal characters, because I think it's important that everybody has a look to them and a feel to them that feels very textured and interesting and believable. And then you're with them, you're in the story, and you go with it. You continue to follow the story, and you're part of their experience.
Well, it's incredible work this season. So thank you all so much for sitting down with me, and we can't wait to see where the story continues next.
Oh, thank
Thank
you.
you.
No, season
Thank
3
you.
we're
Thank you.
watching right now in London, and it's wild. It's a really a great continuation of what they'd already done in season 2. So I'm excited for people to see it.
Well, I thought that season 2 was massive. Season 3 is just blew my socks off. So I still haven't got over it. I'm still recuperating. So season 3 is going to be wild.
Well, great. We can't wait. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very
Thank you.
much. Thank you.